All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm Dawn Pick Benson, transformational travel coach, and I run the Amazing Brave Journey program, in which I get the privilege to work with women like Jacque, who's here with me today. Um, Women who are in the middle of kind of different kinds of life transitions who sign up for my program, and we work together to kind of envision what their trip might look like, and then work on the steps toward taking that trip, planning it, dealing with the fears involved, dealing with the tactics, all of the like nitty gritty details, and then they get to do the fun thing. They get to go on the trip, and then they also have support on their return. So the cool thing is it's a group program. So although Jackie's one of the women in the program, there are others as well, each planning their own solo trip, but doing it with the support of one another, which I think is the magic secret sauce in
Mm.
the program. But so today I am doing a series of short conversations with Jacque about what her trip was like and what her experience in Brave Journey was like. So,
Mhm.
welcome, Jacque.
Thank you, Don. This is like really exciting because, well, signing up for the program, I was just guided. It's just one of those things that kind of blipped across my screen, my email, whatever, and what is this all about? And it just kept saying, do this. And so I did it, and I'm like, holy crap, a moly. There's some good stuff in here. So it was much bigger and better and um, than anything that I could have imagined. So exciting. And to be going on a trip that I really even hadn't planned. So yeah.
I know it's amazing. Like you have been an incredibly fun part of the group, and I know you had decided on your trip um, to go to Crete, which is an island off of Greece. Um, I got that right, yes.
Yes.
All of a sudden I went, wait, I do know these things. Um, so I want you to tell me a little bit about, because we often talk in Brave Journey about sort of planning for the unexpected or just knowing that we go into it and you had a lot of intention set for the retreat or the trip. You knew that you had some feelings you wanted to feel, some things you wanted to experience. But we also always talk about no matter what happens, no matter how well we plan a trip, things don't often always go exactly according to plan, but also sometimes that's the magic in it. If we're ready for it and we also understand that that's possible and that it's normal. And so, anyway, I am curious about Crete when you arrived. Tell me about what it was like when you got there and what you experienced.
Well, the journey there, the plane ride was quite the experience itself because I have my body does not cooperate in a lot of like great ways for long travel, but I did it. And that was one of the things that I planned on in my head was that I was just going to embrace the unknown and I was just going to go and see what happened. And so when I landed in Crete, I'm at this very, very small airport. And I will have to say, I was staying with people I didn't even know. They just offered to like host me because I put that out there. And so I had no idea who
It was
these,
a friend of a family member, though, right? Not just a
right,
random person. Okay.
right. But I didn't know them and I had never
Yeah.
met them. And we did like one little chat before I went. Lovely people. But I arrive and you know how it's so exciting, like, the big wig people, well, not the biggest ones, but they get the sign and it's held up with your name. Well, my name, there was a gal standing there with my name, but she didn't realize that she had the paper upside down and backwards. And so I'm like, okay, is this how the trip's going to be upside down and backwards? I don't know. But remember, Jack, you're embracing the unknown. So that was the that was kind of like an icebreaker without saying anything, you know? And so it's like, And she had big sunglasses on and everything. So it was just kind of one of these. It was, I don't know, like a movie scene or something, a comedy. But yeah, so get picked up, small airport, everything's great. I mean, it took me to get my little SIM card changed, and I mean everything. I mean, it was just like luxury of the unknown. And so we get settled, we get back to their house, which was just a few miles, less than like 5 or 7 miles from their house. Get in, get settled, and they want to take me in their car to go, let's explore the island, and we want to show you all kinds of different things. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I was so jet lagged, I had to rest for a little bit, and then I got up, and then I started feeling really lightheaded and kind of dizzy and really queasy. But I thought, oh, I'll be okay, And it was all the air motion or whatever, the air sickness or whatever, motion sickness. And so we get in their little car and we're driving quite fast around these turns and ups and hills and downs and then valleys and up the mountain and down. And I am just like trying to hang on to the side of the car, and I'm in the front seat. So there's no masking it too much. I mean, I had to mask it because it was like, I just met these people and I don't want to disappoint them. And so I'm hanging on to the car door and I'm trying to focus just on one small thing in front of me in the car and not looking too much outside because I knew any minute I was going to lose it. And this was a couple hours. And then at some places we got out and I'm like, okay, maybe if I go around to the side of the car and avoid them, if I need to do what I need to do, I can do it without anybody, and then whatever. But anyway, so that was a trip and a half in itself. I made it. It was great. But that was a big one that I did not expect, And so we got back to the house and I just kind of, I need to rest. And the next couple of days, I just, I took care of myself. I loved on myself and just didn't worry about trying to get out and see everything and do everything. Just get acclimated to my space, to the bedroom they had set up for me because, I mean, the view, it was just, it was one of those double windows you open and it was the view of the Mediterranean Sea. And I'm like, well, I can handle that. The other unexpected thing, oh my gosh, you're going to Crete, you've got this beautiful view of the Mediterranean Sea. Well, it was unusual weather for a whole week. It would rain, it was overcast, it was dark, it was dreary. And this was not, the normal. And so they kept saying, oh, trust us, the sea is really blue, you're going to see it. It's coming. It's
blue
coming.
that we all see in pictures.
Right. And so it took a week for that to happen. But when you say that's when the magic happens, that's when the magic happened, that I was really able to get to know them, acclimate myself, with my surroundings. And I was in a compound of 3 Americans, and they were 3 American families, and they were all military. And so they had goats and chickens and dogs and cats and more cats and more cats. And so I was just able to kind of make myself at home, make it feel like home. And so doing that was really the key for me to be able to enjoy the rest of the trip, because I didn't have a time frame of how long I was going to stay. And I ended up staying a month, and they didn't want me to leave. They wanted me to stay. And I'm just like,
problem to have. That's amazing though. I think that is important. That's something we talk about, especially as all of us get older, because none of us in the group are, spring chickens. we're not 20 anymore. And so and it's often something I hear women talk about is, can I handle the flight and deal with the jet lag and all those things? And I think one of the important things which you hit on is just, taking that time to care for ourselves. And we talked a little bit, everyone makes their journey the way that they need it to be. But because yours was a little more open-ended as well, it gives it, like, you had already built in some time in which you could just, and I do suggest that for lots of women to just, because I will do that too. I'll go somewhere a couple of days before I know I need to really be doing anything, because I need my body to acclimate, and we need to take care of ourselves, and also to know that odd things happen, or if you're staying with someone else, sometimes they want you to do something that might not be something that's great for you at the time. But you don't know them yet. So you need to, go, it's all part of the journey. But I love all the things that you applied there. And then eventually it's almost this like it's really like the whole thing is metaphorical, right? You come in and it's rainy and it's cloudy, and then eventually the skies part and it becomes blue. And you ended up having this amazing journey.
Mm-hmm. And the thing too, Dawn, was that, you see all these photos. I had picked Greece as my destination, just kind of pulling it out of the hat because I didn't have anything really planned. And then it came down to Crete. Well, all the photos and everything I have seen of Greece are all the beautiful blue and white, and all the bright florals and, different things. And then where I was very, very rural, like I said, with the goats and the chickens and, and everything. So there was lush green, but there wasn't a lot of the bright florals or it was really rough and rural, So, I mean, yeah. So it was different. That was different than what I had seen in photos. So I'm like, what am I doing? Where am I? But then I had the opportunity to, the gal that her and her husband that I was staying with, they had a friend that had a tour company, and it was just like a little mini bus. And so she connected me with them. And so then I was able to go on some tours that I didn't plan, or it just kind of happened, So
it's amazing.
Yeah. And one more thing is that I decided I was going to do an art journal. And so I would I'm an artist, so I would kind of sketch or draw in a little art journal each day. That was very therapeutic because then it helped me slow down and then realize, oh, this is what's taking place, or all the magic things that happened. I could kind of draw and write about each day in there. So that was fun. And I'm still working on it. I've been home for quite some time. But I can go back and still finish them up by the photos I took. So
oh my gosh, that's so fun.
A lot of the unknown, and embraced it all and just kind of let go and received whatever came.
That's awesome. Okay, so I want to transition to my next question. I'm curious because you kind of alluded to this as well, but I'm curious. So tell me about what happened during your trip, because I know that you did some, like, you were texting me and sending me pictures while you were gone. I was overseas at the same time you were overseas, and I was having a ball, like, well, following along. I was getting pictures of you dancing in the street, and you were kayaking. You sent me a video, something, and then you were crawling under a tree, which now I can't remember the details. Something about a really old tree. All I know is you, which is why I wanted you to talk about first the low points when you arrived, because suddenly there was this parting of the, literally parting of the skies, and then you were in it, and you were just, and one of your words for traveling was vibrant, I think. And so it felt like a very vibe, like from the pictures I saw, but I'm not gonna put words in your mouth. Go ahead and tell me what you experienced. You were like driving around mountains by yourself, all kinds of things, and you've not traveled overseas really since you were a teenager. So this is not,
Right.
this was all.
So this was the traveling, abroad was all new for me, especially since all the new things taking place. But I knew I had saw one of their posts on Facebook that they had kayaked and in the sea. And I'm like, oh my gosh, into these caves. I'm like, that was the only thing that I really wanted. I had placed the intention of that's what I really wanted to do. Well, I didn't know how to kayak. So before I left on my trip, I went to this little lake. Now we're talking a little lake, like you could probably walk across it if it was low enough, and rented a little kayak, got in it because my body wise with different things, I didn't know if I would be able to sit low enough, if my body could handle that, and if I could get out of the kayak. So without turning over. So
my fear.
without an automatic eject, But so I went 3 or 4 times and I did it. And I thought, I know I can do this. I can get in and out. So of course, a lake versus a sea, Jacque, that's a little bit different, but I didn't think about that. So I get there and the gal, her husband, they have kayaks. And so they had put them on top of the car, the little Jeep thing. And we're driving down a hill. I mean, just right by their house. The sea's right there. So we just drive down this hill and she goes to put on the brakes. And all of a sudden, the kayaks go off the vehicle, down the windshield, down the hood of down the hill of this road. He forgot to tie them down, latch them. He had put them up there, but he didn't secure them. And it was just hysterical. And I just happened to be videotaping her because I was asking her a couple questions and looking at the sea. And then all of a sudden the video expands and then all you see are these kayaks in the front windshield. And it was pretty funny. But anyway, we recovered from that. He came, met us, put him back on, went down the road and got in. And it was amazing. And I didn't know that I could even do that. And I did it. And then at the end of the trip, I was able to kayak again. And the day before I left is when we were going to kayak, but I fell and really injured my arm and I couldn't lift it or anything. I was in tears. And so, of course, they took care of me. They took me to what's called a pharmacy, where you go in, you tell them what's wrong, and they give you the medication or whatever you need. You don't have to go to a doctor. And so that was, and I had hurt my arm before in the beginning of the trip. They were gone on a safari. And so I house sat for 10 days. And so what I did is I cleaned out their rose garden and their vegetable garden and doing some things, and I hurt my arm. So this was a second injury. So, but anyway, so the last day, they said, well, what do you want to do today? Because, obviously you can't kayak. And I'm like, oh, yes, I can. And I was moving my arm. And so that whole other day, I just laid low, loved on myself. And it was the magical miracle that I was able to do it. And then kayaked, we went into the Mediterranean Sea, and the waves were so big that day. It was big white water. He said the waves were like 2.5, 3 feet. And I'm just like, okay, let's just do it. And we're kayaking across the Mediterranean Sea, and we had to kayak around a huge Navy ship. And I mean, we're like this little bitty compared to this big ship, right? And so you get all the water turbulence from that ship too, and the waves. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And he's like, are you doing okay? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, well, okay, because this is where we have to commit. Either we turn around and go back to shore, or we go full on and there's no stopping until we get to the caves. And he pointed the caves out, and it was a little bitty black dot. It was 2.5 miles. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think we're going. This was on my only thing. And we went, got in there, got inside the caves, and getting into the caves, he said, you have to see that big rock. I mean, it was a cliff. That's rock. You have to focus on that and go as hard and as fast as you can and go straight for that. And I'm like, that doesn't seem very, he said, because the waves are so big and the direction of the waves, it will, when you get there, it's going to shift you and take you right, suck you right inside the cave. I'm like, okay. So I did it. We get inside the cave, and that was the most magical. It was like an out-of-body experience. It was beautiful, all different colors in there, and the sun was shining inside the opening of the cave, and it was huge, and bats and birds, and it was great. So that was one of the big highlights. And so I was able to do that. And yeah,
that's amazing. And what I want to say to or point out for people who are listening is during part of the Brave Journey program, we talk about early on, we get like do a lot of self-discovery and getting to know what
Mhm.
we want and need from our trip. And as you're getting from Jackie right now, like some of the I do an exercise with people, which if you're part of it, you'll get to learn. But this exercise where you kind of suss out what your heart and what your soul's kind of really needing and wanting out of travel. And some people just really want peace, tranquility, respite. Um, but for Jackie, some of her words were vibrant and brave. And what you're seeing right now, or what you're hearing her talk about, because not everyone wants to kayak in the open sea. I'm not sure that I want to just yet. But it completely, what I love hearing from you is that it completely aligns with the things that we found early on that you were desiring of
Mhm.
this new vibrancy, this new aliveness, this ability to be brave. And I mean, what about like talk about the epitome of brave and vibrant? You're in the like kayaking around a military boat and going into a cave. I love that because it so suits what you were looking for. And that's really the magic of the program too, is you finding out what you need and what you want. And
Mhm.
it's almost like your soul becomes this magnet toward it. So even though you
Yes.
came in and you had this rough start, soon it just started magnetizing you to doing things like kayaking and um, and driving their stick shift car around the mountains and all
Oh
that
my
other.
gosh, that was a whole nother thing that I did not expect, because I asked them, was there a place that I could rent a car while I was there? And they said, well, it might not be, it might not be necessary. Do you know how to drive a stick? And I'm like, oh yeah, I love it. I've always had a stick, except for the car that I have now. And
Mhm.
so they went on this African safari, and they were gone for, I don't know, 10, 14 days, whatever. And so I house sat for them, took care of animals and the garden and, all that kind of stuff. And they said, well, just use our car while we're gone. So I did. So I got in and I toured around. And I mean, the roads, now everyone there has a little, and I would say 95% of the cars are white. So it's a little white car, very small, little Fiat. So, and the roads are very, very narrow. So if there's two cars in a lot of the places, if you see somebody coming, you need to stop and kind of pull over to the side as much as you can so you can let the other car pass, or vice versa, or whatever, or play chicken and see what happens. That was
Always.
not one of the games I wanted to play, but so I did. I went and I adventured out in their car, and I drove all these windy roads, and I thought, man, I feel like a race car driver. But I was only in second gear, because of all these hairpin turns, and it was like I hadn't experienced anything. So I went out and I explored, and there was this grape stand, and I passed it. I thought, oh, I want to do a whippy do. Well, a whippy do for me is you make a U-turn, go back. Okay.
Okay. I was
Yeah.
like,
A
like, is that
whippy
a
do, yeah.
disclaimer or
So
what?
I go back to this grape stand, and I pull up next side of it, and all these grapes, they still had the long vines on them, and everything. They were so fresh, the most amazing grapes. And an older man came up on a little motorcycle, like not a moped, a little bit more of a motorcycle. And so he asked me, I could tell he was the owner of the vineyard. And so he asked me, he goes, you American? I'm like, yeah. And he holds my face and he goes, ooh, beautiful, beautiful. And I mean, that was one of the most magical moments, because I just followed the intuition to go back and stop at this grape stand. And he was the most kind and loving person, and didn't speak much English, but we did have a conversation through short conversations of words, mixing and matching and putting them together. But that was one of the most magical experiences. And that was the unknown. I just went out
I love
driving,
that.
exploring, you
I
know.
love those
Mhm.
serendipitous moments where you don't expect to meet someone, or the way that you're even learning how to communicate with someone who doesn't speak your own language, but there is a
Right.
way that
That
we
was the being brave, going out. I knew how to drive a stick, but it was their car. It was different. And of course, all these, straight up hills and down. And so you have to be able to, have your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time and, give it the go, but, and it was, it was so much fun. And then I was just so, um, I guess so in tune, I started getting to the island. Had my phone and I was going to use GPS to like get back to their house, but my phone ran out of battery. And so I didn't have a map. I didn't have, you know, Google and GPS was not there to support me. But I wound and found my way back, and I found my way back to their house. So that was that.
Okay.
The one thing with their friend that had the tour company, the little tour business, not a big company. This was another magical moment because I love olive oil and, all the kind of stuff. And you hear about that there, Greece, all the olives and olive oil. I went on a tour to an olive oil press place where the farmers brought in their big trucks. Big trucks for them was like a small dump truck here, very small. And where you would see all the fresh olives and they would dump them. And then they took us through the whole process and everything. But we were able to go to a place where they had the oldest olive tree that's supposed to be the oldest olive tree in the world, over 14,000 years plus. And they had it blocked off. They don't harvest from that tree. They never have. The branches of it is what's used for the Olympics, like the olive leaf branch, whatever. So they use that. And you were able to, the roots had grown up so far from the tree that you could actually, if you were daring enough, you could get down and crawl under the roots and then come up through the middle of the tree. And so I was able to do that.
I was like, and of course we did this.
Of course. But with, to replace knees, and not being able to maneuver very well, I did. I got down on the ground and kind of shimmied my way in there. And it was painful, but it was one of the most exhilarating experiences. That again was another magical moment, being inside this tree. And no, there was no damage to the tree or whatever. A lot of people ask about that. You cannot climb the tree, but you can shimmy through the hole, crawl under, and stand up inside of it. Yeah. So
that's amazing. What a cool moment.
Yeah, that was another magical moment.
Yeah. I love how your trip seems so aligned to me of what you were looking for and hoping for. It had its ups and down moments too, which they all do. And we talk about that because no matter how much I travel, there's always stuff that goes wrong. You cannot plan everything. But I am curious about what it was like when you came back then, because you had this amazing journey. You were gone for a month. You had, as we talked about, that it started out a little bit difficult and then you had your highs. And I'm sure some middays in there figuring things out. If I remember right, you might have gotten sick somewhere in there. But you came home, and tell me because I think that what people don't always realize or don't talk about as much is what it's like coming back. Especially if you're gone for a long time, but even if it's a short trip, we're often, first of all, it's a lot of taxing on our bodies, traveling back and forth and changing time zones. So there's a lot of that, but then there's also this mental, emotional, even spiritual thing that's going on with us, where we were in one place and now we come to transitioned into a new one. And not everyone understands the trip we took or knew what we were doing or is even curious about the trip, and you come home. And sometimes people can do this without a hitch, but a lot of times it's a difficult transition, especially especially difficult to expect to just come in with a lockstep back into your normal life and, have a party when you get home and suddenly everything's normal again. It doesn't usually work that way.
Mm.
And I always like to, we talk about that in the group a lot. And kind of, but it's always also interesting to me how everyone has their own journey. I feel like every time I come home from a trip, it's different
Mm.
for me too. So I'm
Mhm.
curious what yours was like.
Wow. Coming back, and I call it the re-entry because I'm re-entering back into my world. I've just been into another world. And, when you take a trip, it takes a few days to get acclimated to that place. Well, then you're acclimated to that place and you're there for a month and you've got to come back and re-enter into the the life now of the unknown of what you left behind. So even when I've taken small trips, I've always added like a day or two on the end of it, that I didn't have anything planned, nothing on my calendar, nothing. So when I came back, there was only two of my good friends and my daughter that knew that I was home, and people around me. I didn't go out, you know, busyness, to go do things or whatever for a week or so. It just kind of laying low, slowly unpacking, and just getting myself back into my routine. My sleep routine is very important. So getting back on the time, the time difference was half a day, so there's a big time
Yeah.
difference, so
Yeah.
that wreaks havoc on your body. But I was very fortunate that when I came back, and I didn't plan it this way, but I would suggest planning it this way, that when I came back, it was early evening. So when I got home, I'm exhausted from the whole plane ride and everything, that when I got home, I literally left my bags at the door and went and crawled into bed and went to sleep. So if I would have had a flight that came back in the morning or early afternoon, I would have been fighting to stay up to try to start my regulation of sleep. But then I was able to sleep a really good solid night. I think I slept 11, 12 hours maybe. And
That
just
makes a
really,
huge difference on your return. If you, that is something
yeah.
to think about and strategize about, and like knowing when your flight leaves, not only when it leaves from where you're coming from, but where, like when you're arriving, and thinking about that. And, am I arriving at a time in which I'm going to have to stay up for hours still in order
Yeah.
to acclimate? Pretty grueling. Um, and
Yeah.
as you were talking, something popped into my mind too that I remember you talking about when you came back, how the food that you ate there and influenced what you were eating when you came home.
Mhm.
And I kind of loved that as well, because I'm just thinking about the takeaways that you had when you came back and how that trip changed you.
Yeah, that's a good one because the lovely couple that I stayed with, I I don't like getting up real early, and so that was one of my concerns. Am I going to have to be super super quiet, or do I have to get up early because they're getting up early? But they were semi late risers, 10, ish, whatever. But they have been intermittent fasting for years. So they wouldn't eat till like 4 o'clock in the evening or until we went out to dinner or something. Well, I would have a little snack or something, in between there, whatever. But I was always interested in that. And so I was placed into that situation, right? I mean, I had food and different things that, don't get me wrong, I could go down, I was welcome to go and get whatever I wanted to eat, and they had taken
They
me to,
weren't forcing you to fast with them.
right. No, no, no forcing, but it was such a great feeling, and I was able to do that. And so, of course, the Mediterranean lifestyle, it's fresh foods and fruits and vegetables, and taking your time eating. If you're going to go out to dinner, plan for 2 hours, because that's just the way it is, at least, and it was so nice to be able to eat slowly and take your time and really savor and enjoy every bite. So when I got back home, I was kind of doing that before I left, maybe not eating till around noon, or so. But then I've extended it now to like 2 or so in the afternoon. And I had this big Greek salad. I mean, I crave it now every day. That's really what I want. And so, yeah, so that has made an easy transition for me, with that kind of lifestyle. So,
Yeah.
and being active every day, doing something,
Yeah. Do you have any other kind of final thoughts or advice for anyone considering doing something like this, going on a big trip? I mean, this was a big trip for you. It's not something you do regularly. Um, you hadn't gone since you were high school, so
Well,
it was a big deal. But
yeah,
I know
it was a big
you
deal.
traveled within
But
the US. You have traveled within the US, so it's not like you
and that's what I was going to say, Don. Like, just because I took a big trip out somewhere, that's not that would not
Mhm.
be my intention for everybody. A big trip, maybe your big trip. Sometimes for me it was just going away 3 or 4 days, and maybe a week or two somewhere in the U.S. can be just as big and just as inspirational and get so much magic out of it. Don't, that's what I would say is like, don't think you have to go abroad to have your own brave journey, because you can have it at home, and go away for a staycation. I mean, have a staycation in your home and go adventure out to maybe a big city that you haven't been to, and maybe just go for the day or overnight or the weekend, or it doesn't have to be a month and abroad. So, and I would say anybody thinking, well, I don't know what any of this has to do with me. Well, it probably doesn't, it's what it has to do with you, you know. So
Mhm.
you
Yeah,
take,
because we all make our own trip, and I do have people ask me often, do I have to go overseas? Does it have to be a big trip? What if I only have 3 days? I think I think a journey is what we need it to be. And
mhm,
sometimes that's what we have is a weekend, or that's what we need is a
mhm,
weekend. I love what you're saying too, because this program also has kind of inspired me to make it, it's almost like a way of thinking and a lifestyle now of just being is we're on this brave journey in life. And so I'm back home in Grand Rapids now, and I'm often thinking, you know, what am I needing to feel this summer? Do I want, like, maybe I just need to go the weekend, and spend it at the lake, or to be a little more adventurous in my own hometown and to figure out some things. Or maybe there's some cities I hear people sometimes talk about cities in Michigan that I've never even heard of. And I think
mhm. Right.
maybe a road trip is in order, so there's ways that we can dip our toes into traveling or to do what suits us best. So
The other
I
thing
love this.
too was my trip was planned 18 months out, so it wasn't something that happened right away. And
Hmm.
which I'm really grateful for that, because my Brave Journey started when I started the Brave Journey program, because we went through all kinds of assessments and different things that I learned. Don, I can't even tell you how valuable the things I learned up front. Like, as soon as the Brave Journey program started, we started diving into stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I learned so much more about me as a person, as an individual, of my true core authentic self, than um, than it was learning about all the travel. And so for me, that was ultimately the most valuable part, was learning more about myself to apply my different things about me, like my weaks and strengthnesses, how to apply them to my trip. And now I can use that every day in my life. And I started doing those things, or knowing more about me and applying my interest and my strengths, and being aware of my weaknesses and how to kind of shift those things in my everyday life. And then when I went on the trip, then it was like, oh, this is golden, and then I came back, and man, did I really use and apply those things when I came back for that reentry. because that
Oh,
was really important. And now I'm continuing to do more things, and I go back to my I made a Brave Journey binder of all my notes and everything in there, and I go back to it all the time, and I'm always revisiting and learning new things that are popping up that didn't pop up before. So I can thank you so much, because when somebody says, you know, it's kind of cliche, this was life changing, you know, whatever. But for me, it really was, because it was a huge shift and a very great one. And I'm very grateful. So thank you for sharing all your gifts and talents and putting it into this little package that was still is ever giving. Thank you.
gosh, thank you for being part of it. You're welcome. And I'm so glad. I'm so glad that we got to work together on this. You are a bright light in our group, and it is so, yeah, it's been my joy and privilege as well. And you just kind of encapsulated it all for me really well, and how, you know, the reason I love this program, and the way that you were able to take the journey. It's the reason the program is not 4 weeks long, because you were learning and practicing and growing and learning those strengths and weaknesses, well before you went on your trip, and then got to practice it on your trip and then back. And now you're part of an alumni group in Brave Journey. So we're all practicing it together all the time now. So
And now it's a lifetime Brave Journey, because there's still things that come up that I don't know if I can do that, and I'm like, oh yeah, go back and revisit some exercises or do different things. And so this will go with me forever.
thank you so much for making the time to do this today. I really
Oh,
appreciate it.
absolutely. It was
Um,
fun.
yeah, I love sharing your journey with others. So, um, yeah, everyone, thanks for your time. I'm Dawn Benson, transformational travel coach, and see you next time.
Blessings.